Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. Today, as we progress in the road to WrestleMania, I'm going to be watching and reviewing every WrestleMania, and you know where I'm going with this, with the exception of 17, 19, 20, and 21. For all the new listeners here that are not aware of that, they are already here on the channel from last year, right here in the WrestleRant video category, the video series, if you want to go back and check those out. Today, I'm talking about WrestleMania 8. So I thought this was one of the better WrestleManias. I know I said it was not one of the better ones, actually, my last review on WrestleMania 7 at the end of the video, but looking back on the results right now, it actually wasn't really that bad of a show. And like I've said in my past WrestleMania reviews, to kind of reset for those old listeners and new listeners that are not aware, a lot of these WrestleManias, the early ones anyway, did not have many meaningful matches. A lot of these matches were only a few minutes long, did not have many stories behind them. They were just going to tack on just for the hell of it. And you won't see that nowadays. A lot of these, nowadays, every single match on the card, more often than not, has a story behind it, unless it was added at the last minute, which, does tend to happen sometimes. But early on, these WrestleManias were not great. I mean, if you're not an old school fan, you don't appreciate that kind of stuff, then these WrestleManias are not for you. That said, though, there was a lot of stuff about the early WrestleManias that were good. I mean, there were some really good main events. There was some great stuff involving Randy Savage, Hogan, Warrior, Jake Roberts, Ted DiBiase, and a lot of others too. A lot of awesome tag team matches as well. So I'm going to be breaking that down for you right here in my WrestleMania reviews. Kicking off the show with Shawn Michaels versus El Matador. So even with the most irrelevant of opponents, El Matador, Shawn Michaels still was able to shine his first single showing at WrestleMania, so a really good showing here from Shawn Michaels. I think the first of 3 WrestleManias that he would kick off. I know he was in the opening match of WrestleMania 9. WrestleMania 10, I don't think he was, because I know he was in the ladder match that year. But he was in the opener the year before with The Rocker, so that's probably what I'm thinking of. But a really good match to kick off the show with El Matador, and Shawn Michaels would score the victory here and come out victorious, so good stuff there, even though the matchup wasn't really too memorable, but it was a nice showing for the now singles competitor, Shawn Michaels. Up next, The Undertaker going 2-0 at WrestleMania with a win over Jake Roberts. Again, with the early matches with The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and a lot of people tend to forget, a lot of the wins over the course of Undertaker's WrestleMania career were not great. There were some good matches there, like his match with Flair and his match with Triple H at WrestleMania 17 and 18 respectively. But a lot of the other WrestleMania matches that he's had, early on in his career were not amazing. His match with Giant Gonzalez, which I'll talk about in my WrestleMania 9 review on Tuesday. His match with the Big Boss Man inside Hell in a Cell from WrestleMania 14 or 15, I think it was. I can't remember exactly. But a lot of those WrestleMania's matches were not good until just maybe if you want to go back to 23, 24, when he really started to steal the show with guys like Batista, Edge, Shawn Michaels, Punk, Triple H, and all those other guys. Still, this was not a bad matchup. Didn't get much time, but it was good while it lasted, and Jake Roberts can always be counted on for a good showing inside the ring. So good stuff there. The Undertaker going 2-0 at WrestleMania with a win over Jake the Snake Roberts. Up next, our first really great matchup of the show, in my opinion, Bret Hart versus Rody Piper for the Intercontinental Championship. So this is back when the IC title actually meant something, and whoever held it got a nice run out of it, and it would mean bigger and better things for that person when they eventually dropped it. Rody Piper, unfortunately, even though he came into the show as Intercontinental Champion, would not leave as IC Champion, would not go on to ascend to the next level in WWE. He wasn't a main event star. He has WrestleMania main evented. He has main evented WrestleManias in the past, but he never was never able to win that WWE WWF Championship before the end of his run. Unfortunately, will always go down as one of the greatest wrestlers in history to have never held that title. That said, though, he was a very good Intercontinental Champion, an amazing heel. He had a great match here with Bret Hart. Went about 14 minutes, a lot of awesome wrestling. Bret Hart would come out victorious and capture that Intercontinental Championship. And Bret Hart, unlike Rody Piper, would take that title and then eventually lose it, of course, but go on to main event WrestleMania and become a multi-time WWE champion within the company. So a really good match here. I really enjoyed it. And I think Rody Piper, I think in a WrestleMania fact thing that I did, I think in my hashtag AskGSM trivia thing that I did on Twitter not too long ago, one of my questions was, to whom did Rody Piper suffer his first WrestleMania loss to at WrestleMania 8, or his first one in 5 years? He was not technically undefeated at WrestleMania, but he did go undefeated for about 5 years, and this was his first loss since I think WrestleMania 2 or 3. I think WrestleMania 3. But really good match here. Love this. Up next, kind of a random throwaway, albeit fun, 8-man tag team match pitting the Big Boss Man, Virgil, Sergeant Slaughter, and Jim Duggan against the Nasty Boys, Repo Man, and the Mountie. So two of the worst gimmicks in WWE history with the Mountie and Repo Man. But a lot of other really good wrestlers in this matchup as well. Former tag team champions, the Nasty Boys. Big Boss Man, of course, I was a big fan of. He did his gimmick at this period in time, but he was still a really good wrestler. Very underappreciated in my opinion. Jim Duggan was over. Sergeant Slaughter. Virgil as well was kind of one of those undercard characters. Kind of a random 8-man tag team match that you would even get today at WrestleMania that they kind of just threw together at the last minute just to get everyone on the show. So it was not a bad matchup, just kind of a throwaway tag team matchup. Didn't really mean anything, but it was fun while it lasted. Up next for the WWF Championship, yes, for the first time in quite some time. Now I think maybe the first time since WrestleMania 3, I think, or for the first time since WrestleMania 1, I think it was. I don't think there was any other WrestleMania after 1 that did not end with a main event that was not for the championship. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not exactly sure about that. I have to go back and look again. But this match in the middle of the card was for the WWE Championship, with Randy Savage contending against Ric Flair, who had just come into the company, won that championship in the 30-man Royal Rumble, the first and only Royal Rumble to date to be over the WWE title. And would go on to WrestleMania to defend that title against Randy Savage, like I said before. So Miss Elizabeth was in the corner of Randy Savage here. Mr. Perfect in the corner of Ric Flair. A great wrestling match. And Randy Savage, in my opinion, Shawn Michaels aside and Undertaker's recent WrestleMania performances aside as well, Randy Savage, I think, is one of the more underrated performers in WrestleMania history. Because, like I said, you look at the early WrestleManias, there was some really good stuff, some really good matches here and there, also involving Randy Savage, of course. But a lot of those early WrestleManias weren't great, unlike a lot of the more recent ones. I think it was kind of those middle years, 17 and 19 and 20 and 18, which were kind of the best WrestleManias in history. But still, I think Randy Savage, for the series of matches that he's had at WrestleMania, his matches against Hogan, his matches against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, with, I don't think it was against Piper, but he did face Dusty and Sapphire in a tag team match. I think at WrestleMania 6, his match with the Warrior, and as well as Ric Flair in this show. He will go down as one of the more underrated, underappreciated WrestleMania performers, in my opinion. I don't see his name get brought up too many times when you're talking about Mr. WrestleMania. But this was a prime example of that. I thought this was a great matchup, great stuff from both these guys. Of course, worked really, really well together, and it went on to have another awesome series of matches over that championship for the remainder of 1992. And Randy Savage would win his second WWE title on the show with a win over Ric Flair. So really enjoyed that. Would have taken that over the main event, which I'll get to in a couple minutes. But up next, Tatanka defeating Rick Martel. Basic matchup, really nothing to discuss there. The Natural Disasters contending for the tag team titles against Money Inc., Ted DiBiase and IRS, winning by countout, thus not winning the championships. A fine matchup, was not one of the better tag team matches that I've seen in WrestleMania, or at least in the early WrestleManias where the tag team matches usually stole the show. This was not one of those matches. Earthquake and Typhoon were not an amazing tag team. But still, though, decent stuff there, nothing too bad. Owen Hart defeating Skinner in a minute matchup, quick squash, and that was kind of the WrestleMania formula back then, to do a quick squash match or do a random throwaway matchup right before the main event. I was personally not a fan of it, but I could see why they did it, to bring the crowd down right before the main event. I get that. I don't know, just see a minute matchup on the second. It's not like your ordinary it's not like your ordinary pay-per-view card where you would do that with like a Divas match nowadays or whatever else. Now it's with back then it's a little different, so I could see why they did it. But to see that Owen Hart and Skinner in a random minute matchup got second to last in the WrestleMania card was a little random, but still, though, quick squash match there. And of course, we get to the main event: Hulk Hogan taking on Sid Justice, and there was nothing on the line here, and this would eventually become Sid Justice would go on to become known as Psycho Sid. And they had teased tension between Justice and Hogan going into the show, so that was kind of the whole story here. And why this main evented over Savage and Flair, I'll never really know. And of course, it really has to go back to Hogan and the politics and him main eventing almost every WrestleMania, dating back to the first one. So I understand from that aspect, I understand why it happened. I just don't necessarily agree with it. I definitely would have gone with Savage versus Flair for the championship in the main event, because this was not a good matchup at all. I don't want to say it was deplorable, but it was pretty damn bad, especially considering the match ended in a DQ win for Hogan. So that was really stupid. He would eventually he would close the show anyway, and I could see why they wanted to protect justice, but I don't know. I just thought the matchup itself was not good. It was not given that much time at all, and the finish was just the cherry on top of this just being deplorable. So I would have gone with Savage and Flair in the main event, but that aside, though, on the whole, I thought this was a good WrestleMania, better than some of the more recent ones I reviewed from 1 through 7. I think, like, generally speaking, I thought this was a pretty good WrestleMania, with the exception of the main event. So if you're gonna watch this WrestleMania, watch it in its entirety, but just end at either the tag team title match or end at Owen and Hart Hart and Skinner for all I care. Just don't watch the main event because I thought that was really stupid. But the first half of the show I thought was really good. We had Shawn Michaels in the opener having a very nice performance. The Undertaker going 2-0 at WrestleMania. A great Intercontinental title match. A fun 8-man tag team match. And then a great matchup and an excellent contest for the WWE title between Savage and Flair. The second half of the show left a lot to be desired, so I would just end there. But overall speaking, though, I thought it was a good WrestleMania. So my next WrestleMania review, I'll be talking about WrestleMania 9 as seen in the WWE Network. But in the meantime, and in between time, you guys can find me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Make sure to follow me there. Find me on Facebook at Graham Cheese Matthews. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. All support is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, folks, and I'll catch you in my next video.